Nakobe Dean in the third round, which I think 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we'll be talking about the steal of the draft. We'll ask Matt where he had him rated coming into the draft and why he eventually fell to the Eagles in the 80s. Can't believe he was all the way down into the 80s, and how much of an influence are measurables, because that's what Matt is key with, is the way that teams use analytics to help evaluate players. I think they've gotten this one wrong. John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365. You got your Mac and Mac guys in tow for another hour. Matt Manacharian from sportsinfosolutions.com going to join us, talk about the draft. I haven't had Matt on since the draft. We'll do that today. And certainly one of the things I'm going to bring up is the Eagles getting Nakobe Dean in the third round, which I think 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we'll be talking about the steal of the draft. We'll ask Matt where he had him rated coming into the draft and why he eventually fell to the Eagles in the 80s. Can't believe he was all the way down into the 80s, and how much of an influence are measurables, because that's what Matt is key with, is the way that teams use analytics to help evaluate players. I think they've gotten this one wrong, because I think the kid's going to be a star, and they'll go back and reevaluate the measurables. The guy I keep referring to in comparison, I know they're two different positions, different side of the balls, whatever. But yeah, Cooper Kupp fell into the third round a couple of years as well. Why? His measurables. He ran 4.6 and change at the combine. Oh, you can't think a wide receiver who only runs 4.6. Oh, except he goes on to become the best wide receiver in the National Football League. I'm hoping it's the same for Nakobe Dean.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you you have to have a baseline, I always say, to play in the NFL from an athleticism, size, strength standpoint, those measurables you're talking about. Once you hit that baseline, um, then it becomes the other stuff, the technique, the work ethic, all that kind of stuff, football IQ. I think all that stuff, Nakobe Dean, the intangible stuff, the football IQ, that stuff, he's gotten speed. So you start talking about, but you mentioned the Cooper Cup. Here's the difference to me why Nakobe Dean can't become Cooper Cup on the defensive side. The game isn't played like that anymore. Like the game, it's a passing game, and Cooper Cup's a wide receiver. So, if he gets in the right situation, which he did with the Los Angeles Rams, obviously, and they have a high volume thrower, as I like to say. So he's going to get a lot of targets. He's going to get a lot of opportunities. If you're going to be a 3-down linebacker in the NFL, it's about pass coverage more than anything else. What Nakobe does well is very instinctive, very old school player, always going to be in the right spot, no false steps, going to be really good for the so-called 2-down player. Can he cover? Can he cover? Can he be on the field for 3 down? That to me is going to tell the story of Nakobe Dean. Because if you're a 2-down player, you're limited. You're not going to be Cooper Cup. That's what I'm saying.
Didn't the Eagles trade up to get a 2-down player in the first round?
Yeah, and he's limited as well. And people have made that criticism. The people who do criticize the Jordan Davis pick, that's what they're criticizing. You shouldn't take a 2-down player with the 13th overall pick. You've heard that over and over again. Can they have a big enough impact on the game to be worth 13 overall? That's a legitimate debate, and the hope is he's more than a 2-down player, and we'll see. I think people talk about the floor versus ceiling. The floor of Jordan Davis is a 2-down great run stopper. That's the floor, and that's pretty good. Can he hit the ceiling where he's a 3-down player? I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, same thing. There's certain limitations. If you're not on the field all the time, it's tough to be that effective, and that's why there's a bigger value on edge rushers and certain positions than other positions. I mean, that's why they value positions the way they do.
Except edge rushers too can be two down players in the specialized world that is the new National Football League with situational substituting and the like. Here's my opinion in Nakobe Dean, and we'll find out if he's going to be anywhere near as good as I think he's going to be. You're not going to want to take this kid off the field ever. That he will absolutely be a 3-down linebacker. When they're in dime coverage, he's going to be the one linebacker left on the field for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
That's how good I think he's going to be.
Yeah, I don't see it from a pass coverage standpoint. We were talking about tight ends. I mean, think about the tight ends. I say it all the time. I mean, the Kittles, the Kelseys, the Goddards of the world. I mean, they're all monsters. And the fact that, even if the problem with those types of players is, safeties can cover them, but they're too big. They just, wall them off. They play basketball. And certain linebackers can deal with them physically because they have the strength and maybe they're longer than Nakobe, but they're not athletic enough. And that's why it's a difficult matchup. So I don't know. It is a tough position to play. And one of the reasons it's been devalued and specialized, and I'm talking about linebacker, and because the coverage part of it is so difficult. And there really are. There aren't a ton of 3-down linebackers in the NFL because it's just it's a matchup nightmare from a defensive perspective. So you try to get as many coverage people on the field as you can, and then you have the trickle effect that I always say nobody cares about in May. Nobody cares about run support now. So we talk about Hassan Reddick's going to be there. Kaiser White's going to be there because he can cover, and everything looks good on paper in May. Yeah, we got this guy to cover this guy, and this guy's going to rush the passer. And then all of a sudden, you get to December, and you got the 300-pound right tackle, bowling over the 235-pound defensive end. And oh, by the way, he's backed up by a glorified safety playing linebacker.
Right.
These are the issues you have, and probably keep Jonathan Gannon up at night.
If there are no linebackers in the league that are going to be 3-down linebackers, that the league has become such a situational substitution and, yes, added influence more and more every single week on who can cover who out of the backfield. And like, okay, well, then you're right. Nakobe Dean might not be a 3-down linebacker because there would be no 3-down linebackers in the NFL. I think at some stage in his career, and maybe as early as year 2, he might be on the field as much as any other linebacker in the league. If it's not 3 down, well, then so be it. If he's getting more snaps than any linebacker on any other team, I'd say he's a pretty successful linebacker and a guy that.
Well, yeah, I mean, so here are your pretty much 3 down, and I'm going to throw Micah Parsons out because he is different. He was edge rusher. He's sort of that weird, unique player. So I'm going to throw him out. Devondre Campbell, Green Bay had a great year last year. Fred Warner.
And got paid.
Yeah, Fred Warner, great player. Darius Leonard, great player. Demario Davis, great player. Bobby Wagner, Hall of Fame player. Matt Milano in Buffalo is probably one of the more underrated players. Eric Kendricks, who I think, is the best coverage linebacker in football. Those are the guys you're talking about. Can he get to that level? We'll see. But to me, it'll depend on coverage.
Johnny, how many names did you roll out there? 6 or 7?
Yeah, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah,
7 out of 32 teams in the National Football League. So
well, there are some other guys that aren't effective that played. Jordan Brooks in Seattle, Cole Holcomb in Washington. But I don't consider them as effective.
Right. Do I think Nakobe Dean can be as good as those 2 guys you just mentioned?
Oh, yeah.
Damn Skippy, I do.
Isaiah Simmons, who hasn't lived up to the billing. Roquan Smith, who hasn't really lived up to the billing, but is really talented. He might turn into somebody C.J. Mosley with your Jets is another one. Devin White in Tampa Bay, who had a bad year but has won Super Bowls. Deion Jones, who had a bad year but has been a very good player. So these are the sort of the three down linebackers. Tay Crowder with the Giants, who was not good, but um, there's a bunch of them, but not a bunch who do it well, is how I would describe it.
And I think Dean can. I don't know if he gets into that truly upper class, the 5, 6, 7 names you mentioned. 1 year, his career year, he might be in that group, but can he be consistently in that group like a Bobby Wagner, you pointed out, is? I don't know that. But that next group of guys, the next 6 or 7 that you would consider three down linebackers, absolutely believe he can be in that, which makes him a pretty damn valuable player, which you don't usually get in the third round of an NFL draft. Is the getting back to the original point I made. I can't believe the value that the Eagles got with that pick, because if you can get a guy who is in that top tier of top 10 at his position, which would be quote unquote three down linebacker, and you do so at the 80 something pick in the draft, that's a damn good pick, and there's a little luck involved that the other teams passed on as well. I'd actually be a little bit more clued in, supportive, if they had traded up a couple slots to get him, which I know is stupid. You got him where you got him, so if you had to trade up to get him, you wasted to get up and get him. But it would have shown me that, they really did like the guy. We'll never know how much they truly did like him,
I'm interested.
Or it just fell down to them.
I'm interested how it shakes out, because evidently I'm the biggest TJ Edwards fan in Philadelphia, because nobody else. Although,
wait a minute, whoa! One of the two of us suggested TJ Edwards get a contract extension this year. Which of the two of us was it?
That was you.
That was me. So I don't know that you can claim you're the only TJ Edwards fan in town. If I was the guy who suggested first they should do an extension.
Well, my only thing with TJ was they didn't need to. He wasn't going to be an unrestricted free agent. So my thought process was, well, they don't need to extend him yet. So not that he doesn't deserve an extension, but although Pro Football Focus did their most underrated players on each NFL team, and they picked TJ Edwards, so there's somebody else who likes TJ, but I'm going to be in it because I can't take TJ Edwards off the field. So to me, it's Kaiser White. Everybody else we've talked to has said it's going to be Nakobe or TJ, and Kaiser White's going to be out there. I don't think TJ's coming off the field. I don't. But we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, as you can tell, John, if I like a guy, I really like a guy, and I really like Nakobe Dean. It sounds like a knock on TJ Edwards when you say, I'd move Dean to the middle linebacker and keep him on the field as much as I did. It's not a knock on Edwards. It's just I think he can be supplanted by a guy who can be a top 10 linebacker in a game.
No, I get it.
Like Edwards,
one of my favorite stories, 10. I get what you're saying. One of my favorite stories, I probably told you this before, is the Adrian Peterson story, when the Vikings drafted Adrian Peterson. And I asked one of their personnel guys, I go, I didn't know Adrian Peterson was going to become Adrian Peterson. And they were coming off a year. It was a bad team. I think Adrian was the 7th pick somewhere. They were top 10 pick. But they had a good running back by the name of Chester Taylor. Was coming off like a 1,200-yard season. He had 50, 60 balls out of the backfield. Pretty good player.
Was he with the Ravens before or after the Vikings?
Before
the Vikings.
He signed as
he was a nice NFL back.
Yeah, really nice NFL back. And he was coming off his best year. And I'm like, you guys got a lot of holes. Why are you taking a running back? You got a 1,200-yard rusher. And he looked at me and he said, fuck Chester Taylor. And it wasn't, and I tell people, it wasn't an insult to Chester Taylor because they thought he was a really good player. They told me, this is a Hall of Fame runner. This guy's different. And it turned out they were right. And that's, You could argue that. If you think that of Nakobe, now I don't think Nakobe Dean is going to be Adrian Peterson, but if you think that way about a player and you have a good player, good but not great player, then yeah, you say fuck TJ Edwards. I mean,
Thank you, John. You helped me make my point quite well. I'm not ready to go to the links of Hall of Fame for Nakobe Dean just yet, as you did with Adrian Peterson way back when, or your Viking personnel person you were talking to was ready to go there. I'm not there yet, but I think he's a Pro Bowl level guy. I think he can be an all pro level guy. As much as I like TJ Edwards, I don't think I'm going to be putting him in a Pro Bowl level column anytime soon. So yes, I'm not trying to minimize Mr. Edwards, but I am telling you how much I do like Nakobe Dean. All right, he will be the first guy we will talk about with our next guest, Matt Manicherian from they went
Info Solutions,
all website this year rather than putting out a draft guide. Sportsinfosolutions.com. The meeting of analytics with scouting in putting forth projections for guys to be had in the NFL draft. We'll talk to Matt Manicherian next here on Birds 365.